Hi, I'm State Representative Bruce Ayers, and I want to thank you for tuning into my legislative update. As a state representative, I realize how important it is to be accessible and keep my constituents informed of matters going on in Beacon Hill. And my guest today to help me discuss some of these issues is Representative James Murphy, the Chairman of Financial Services from Weymouth, Mass. Jamie, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a busy time of year in Beacon Hill and a lot to talk about, and it's nice to have a colleague come in and talk about some of the issues in the committee. But before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Thanks, Bruce. Thank you to you and QATV for having me here today. I came all the way from Weymouth, about a few miles away, so it wasn't too bad of a commute here. So I represent the towns of Weymouth and Hingham. I'm Representative James Murphy, and I've had the honor to represent those communities for the past 21 years. And I have the pleasure of sitting next to you in the House chamber for the past 21 years, which is also great. But I'm a state rep like yourself, and I ran for office back in 2001. During a special election, I replaced outgoing state representative Paul Haley back then. So I've been in office since. It's my 11th term. Time flies when you're having fun. A little bit of background on me. I married a Quincy girl, Elliott Ave, Mary Ann Hickey. Married of 2 kids, a 5-year-old Maeve and a son Liam, who's 1. So they keep me busy. My wife's a nurse at Beth Israel, and she's actually working today. Thank God for the nurses. So I've been in office a long time now, and it's an honor to serve great communities of Weymouth and Hingham.
It sure is. And how did you get involved in politics?
So prior to being a state rep, I was a assistant district attorney in Suffolk County. I prosecuted criminal cases in the city of Boston. Prior to that, I worked at the appeals court. I was a clerk for a judge at the appeals court, working on statewide civil and criminal appeals. I think I developed an interest in government and politics going back to high school. I went to BC High, then I went to Merrimack College, then I went to Suffolk Law. And I developed an interest in government back then, but never really knowing I'd run for public office. So I developed that interest, and then we had a community issue in Weymouth about 20 years ago that people might remember, that the Foxy Lady Strip Club tried to open up in the town of Weymouth, and they wanted to open up across from my neighborhood at the time. And my neighbors and I really galvanized, as did our community, in opposing the opening of the club. And as in my first year of law school, I went to the State House to talk to my state rep, who was Paul Haley at the time. I never met him before, so I knocked on his door, had a meeting with him, and asked if he'd join us in our struggle to keep the club from opening. Long story short, we became successful. The club didn't open, and Paul Haley ended up offering me a job to be one of his aides at the time. I told him I was in law school, and I was at Suffolk, which was next door to the State House, so he offered me a job. I took it, and I worked at the State House for the next 3 years as an aide. When I graduated from Suffolk Law, I was in school at the time, like I said. I worked at the appeals court, then the DA's office, and then Representative Haley decided to retire back in 2001, and he called me and said that he thought I'd be a great state rep, that I should consider running for office, and I did. And that was over 20 years ago now.
Well, your family certainly has a lot of community roots in the district there. What are some of the issues that you're working on regionally?
Speaking of the family roots, I should mention that I know a lot about Quincy. Obviously growing up in Weymouth, Quincy and Weymouth are very connected. But my family had a long-standing business here in Quincy called Murphy Brothers Volkswagen. It was in North Quincy. My mother and father, my father's Jim Murphy, my mother's Maureen Murphy. They started the company back in 1975, and we operated there till about 5 years ago. So we're in Quincy for over 40 years. So I know a lot of people in Quincy, and actually that's how I met you. I should tell the audience and the viewers that that's how I met you. One day I was at the family business, and a candidate came in who was running for state rep at the time, and introduced himself to us at the business. His name was Bruce Ayers, and so he sat with us for 2 hours talking to us about why he wanted to run for office. I think you were city councilor back then.
That's right, yeah.
So Bruce ended up spending time with us for a couple hours and left, and I said, hope the guy wins. So I never knew what happened. And then a few years later, I ran for state rep. I was elected, and then they brought me into the chamber to sit me in a chair. And who they sit me next to? You. And I said, I know you. You won. He said, yeah, you too. I said, yeah, I won too. And here we are. Yeah. Here we are 20 years later.
It is funny how things work out in life. And your father, of course, in the automotive business. My father was too. My brother, a lot of ties in the Quincy community. And you being a businessman is, and an attorney, just a great background as a legislator.
One of my first jobs in government back then was working for Mike Morrissey. I was at Merrimack College, and I applied for an internship in Mike Morrissey's office a long time ago. So I was an intern in Mike's office, so Mike Morrissey gave me my official kickoff into politics. We like to joke about that.
Well, it's funny. A lot of state representatives look at their district and try to obviously maximize whatever they can, whether it's state funding, state services for the area. And then, we look at it from a statewide perspective to see how it's going to affect the entire Commonwealth. But, as you and I work together, it's legislators, it's important that we take a regional approach.
Right.
Quincy and Weymouth being neighbors, and how we can collectively kind of work together. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Over the course of the past couple of years, of course, COVID hit, and a lot of our residents and businesses have really faced difficult times. So I, along with you and people in our region, as state representatives, have really jumped into action, assisting businesses or people with help during this time, whether it be receiving state benefits or trying to navigate the financial hurdles of applying for state funds and federal funding. So that's been busy for us. We've received thousands of phone calls since the last couple of years, since it really started. This pandemic's really hit people hard. So, as a group, we all work together collectively to help our constituents. And we work with organizations like QCAP, South Shore Elder Services, NeighborWorks, Father Bill's Place. Those organizations have been vital to us to help our constituents who need help. So, as you know, we all work on those things together. In regard to the larger issues, of course, we all work together on funding for infrastructure projects, whether it be schools or senior services or services for working families. So we work together in those areas. We also work on things like coastal resiliency together. I know you've got Wollaston Beach, Quincy's on the water, Weymouth is also on the ocean. So we work on things to make sure that our natural environments are preserved and protected. I want to thank you in the city of Quincy for all of your help. We have a compressor station, obviously, in North Weymouth that for years, for the last 6 or 7 years, is applied and is now built. And so the city of Quincy, Mayor Koch, has been great, as have you, and Ron Mariano, who is obviously the Speaker of the House now, one of my colleagues, someone I look up to, Taki Chan, John Keenan. So we all work together collectively to advocate against the compressor station. The fight still goes on, but those are things that we worked on together as a community, not just Weymouth, but also Quincy. And so I want to thank you for all of that. I think Quincy and Weymouth have a lot of the same issues. We've always got along to work well together, and we continue to do that this year. Obviously, we're going through the budget process now, so you and I will be advocating for our districts through the budget process, which starts right about now. So you and I will work collectively on that. So I think Weymouth and Quincy has always had a great relationship between the senators, the House members, and the mayors.
It's a great point. Like you say, when there's an issue that's going to affect the region, like the compressor station, it was great to see everybody get involved. We share the same goals and objectives to protect the area. Whether it was advocating with Congressman Lynch, Senator Markey, Senator Warren, everybody kind of just rallied around and made sure that our voices were being heard. And, another great point you brought up regionally was the ferries. We're down in North Quincy and Marina Bay there, Squantum Point Park. We've been advocating, for a full-time ferry service. We have the seasonal one now that we're working with in collaboration with Winthrop. But as in your area, you've got the Weymouth and Hingham one. And we're fortunate because, we live in a coastal community to be able to provide our constituents alternative means of transportation, water access. I think I saw a study not too long ago that said the city of Boston was ranked, I think, 2 or 3 as some of the worst traffic in the country. So to be able to offer our constituents an alternative means of transportation to get to downtown Boston, to get some of the cars off the street, it's a great way to collectively advocate together.
We're fortunate. So where we live, so close to Boston, the future of Boston's bright. Obviously it's been a difficult time the past couple of years, but we live in one of the greatest city in the country, and I'm from the greatest town, and you're from the greatest city in the country. So I've been here my whole life. I'm 52 years old, and I really love where I live. We're fortunate that we're so close to the city and so close to things like the ocean. Some of our colleagues have to drive 3 hours to get to the beach. You and I have to drive 3 minutes to get to the beach. The ferries are vitally important to the future of the South Shore, and as are the trains, as are the buses. And when I ran years ago, we didn't have the Greenbush line. The Greenbush line wasn't open yet. It was there was a struggle to kind of fight against opening up the Greenbush line. So we're fortunate years later that we have the rail lines coming through our communities, because it opens up the opportunity for people to buy a house in Weymouth or Hingham, or Cohasset, even further down to Situate, and they get into Boston. They're not sitting in a car for 2 hours every day back and forth. In regard to the ferry service, the ferry out of Hingham has worked great. We've advocated for state and federal funding for a multimodal center down there, which is built. The commuter boat is a very, very popular way to get to Boston. You go from Hingham to Rose Wharf in a half hour. So it's pretty amazing. You can jump on the train like we talked about. So I know the ferry service is important to you in North Quincy. You've done a great job advocating for that, trying to get that ferry service up and running on a permanent basis. The hard thing is always getting it started, and you've done a great job along with your colleagues and the mayor to make sure that at least it's been started. When the pandemic hit, there was a push by the MBTA to cut back on certain services, and they wanted to cut back on the ferry service out of Hingham. And we always advocated that is equally as important as any bus or train. I think at a certain point, the ferry MBTA thought of the ferry service as maybe not as vital as the other lines, but we advocated as a group, including you and Joe Moschino and my colleague Josh Cutler, our colleague on the South Shore, to advocate to make sure they didn't cut the ferry service out of Hingham, because it was in the chopping block. We were afraid that once it was cut, it was never going to come back. Kind of like, in order to get it started, you've got to at least get it started like you're doing. And then once you have it, you got to continue to advocate for it. But I know that people in Quincy are looking for alternatives like the people in Weymouth are. Rather than getting on the road, they want to be able to get on a boat and go back and forth more efficiently. And we're lucky to live in a city that actually provides commuter boat service. It's pretty unique to be able to jump on a boat and to get into Boston and go to work and vice versa. I think when things start to get busy again, the ferries are starting to see more and more ridership, as has the Greenbush line. So as things continue to get better and people return to work, we need to continue to keep the cars off the road. It's a waste of it's a waste of gas. It hurts the environment, and it's just a waste of time. So as a regional solution to our growth, we really need to continue to advocate for increased ferry service, and I'm happy to do what I can to help you out of North Quincy there.
Well, it's a great point. As you mentioned, it's an economic driver. Down in Marina Bay, it not only helps the businesses, it helps with tourism, travel, and there's just so much potential, as you alluded to. From Marina Bay, there could be easily something set up in the near future with some of the goals and objectives, hopefully with some funding, where you could go down the South Shore or you could go up to the North Shore, Yeah. So it's certainly something I look forward to advocating with you too. And now as you alluded to, it's the busy season. We're doing the state budget. And a lot of these nonprofit agencies that you alluded to just do so much for the community, particularly during COVID, because people are still struggling. And some of the resources we have out there, whether it's NeighborWorks, helping people with rental assistance, mortgage assistance, South Shore Other Services with Meals on Wheels, these are important services that I know that you're a big supporter of, that the delegation is a big supporter of, but that we'll be working on together to make sure that they get the necessary funds in the upcoming budget.
Yeah, the services are vital, and we see that even more in the last couple of years since the pandemic hit. The big thing that the state representatives do, like you and I, is we navigate the system for people. There's people that need help, and we advocate for funding for these services, but a lot of people don't know how to access the services. They don't know who to call. They don't know what agency to get into contact with. So a lot of what we do, as as a legislator, is we're the advocate for people. Like we're the caseworker for the person to be able to navigate all the funding and all the red tape and all the applications to make sure that people get the help that they need. And that's, I think, the most important role of a state representative. Despite whatever our titles are at the State House, whatever committees we're on, our in my own opinion, our basic and most important role is to make sure that our constituents are taken care of. So when a phone call comes into us, big or small, they all get the attention that they need, because I think it's incumbent, obviously, upon us to make sure that we're there for our constituents to navigate the things that they just don't have the time to or don't have the ability to understand how to do. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and another good point is working with our businesses. Like with the Quincy Chamber of Commerce with Tim Cahill, we'll work with the small businesses. We'll find out some of their goals and objectives, and then regionally, if we need to advocate together collectively to maybe try to lure a big business to the area or the right type of development, and then working together to make sure we're going to have the right type of impacts, and it's going to help our economic base and job creation. So it's, I think it's important for people to know that these are some of the things that are out there when they're talking to the legislators. It's not only just our districts, but we look at it through a different lens. It's regional issues, it's statewide issues that all come into play at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate. I mean, you and I have been around for a while where we have relationships with these people. Like Tim Cahill does a great job at the Quincy Chamber. I have a relationship with Mayor Koch, relationship with Ron Mariano, Tacky Chan, John Keenan, yourself, the South Shore Chamber, Peter Foreman, along with my own chamber in Weymouth. So we all worked collectively. There's many things that we've worked on as a group, and I have to say that, despite what goes on in Washington, D.C., where you may be able to, people may criticize it as being dysfunctional, I'd say that those things aren't happening in Massachusetts. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, we all work well together. And I can say that it's been an honor to work with you and my colleagues. We're fortunate that Ron Mariano, who I share Weymouth with, Ron represents a part of Weymouth, is now Speaker of the House. He's been a leading advocate for all these things over the years. And I think it's great to have the Speaker of the House from Quincy, someone that we know and that we've worked so well with over the years. I think that's a great advantage to have, being from the same area that Ron is from.
Absolutely. And, they all bring something to the table. They all have different background experiences and education, and we're fortunate. We've got a great delegation in Quincy and in Weymouth. So it's a good working relationship to get things done.
And Congressman Lynch has been a great federal partner for all of us. I mean, Congressman Lynch is very accessible to any of us. Obviously, we all talk to him very often. We pick up the phone, call him on the cell, and he answers all the time, no matter what it is. He's always been there for us. So between the state delegation, the business community, the federal delegation, there's a lot of good people working on our community's behalf.
I think one of the to your point, one of the things that were successful at the State House with, like you say, with the speaker and the leadership and the ideology is we're able to get things done with the governor. Down in Washington, it seems like it's either too far left or too far right, and they can't seem to find a common ground or come to some type of agreement, as opposed to the State House, where you can work with the other branch. We can work with our Senate colleagues. We can work and with the governor's office. He's been out to Quincy and I know Weymouth a lot of times to kind of establish those relationships and find out what some of our goals and objectives are, whether it's transportation, education, economic development, and it's I think one of the reasons the cities have been successful.
Like anything, you learn as you go in a job, right? So we've been around a little bit, you and I, as have our colleagues around us. And I think you and I have worked with, 4 governors, 5 governors, I forget now, 4. So we've worked with a bunch of governors, and obviously it's a governor's race this year, so we'll be on to our 5th governor. And it's going to be an interesting political year. Obviously, there's things going on now in Ukraine and in Europe. Our hearts and thoughts and prayers with the people of Ukraine. So we're all watching that. Very, very disturbing to be able to watch that on TV, play by play every night, like we are. It's obviously the first time it's ever happened like that, at least for me, be able to watch something like
Absolutely.
that. All of us, I should say. So our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with them. And then on the political front, it's an election year. There'll be governors running and statewide candidates are all running. We're running again. We run every 2 years. For me, it'll be my 12th time running. We're elected every 2 years. So the people of Weymouth and Hingham have sent me to the State House every couple of years, 11 times now. And I'm very honored that they do that. They expect things from me, and I hope that over the years that I've lived up to their expectations. And I'll be running again this year, as will you. But I think that, like you say, all of us work well together, no matter what the party line is. We always work on the issues that are in the best interest of our community, and we'll continue to do that.
Talk a little bit about the committee, Financial Services, and what it encompasses, some of the bills, so the viewers get a better idea of what the committee reviews.
So I'm chairman of Financial Services, which oversees all the banking and insurance matters in the state. I have a very experienced and talented vice chairman this year, which is, of course, Bruce Ayers. So for the people out there, we're assigned to committees every 2 years. I've been fortunate over the years. I've been vice chairman of 5 different committees and chairman of 4 different committees. This year, I'm chairman, and last year I was named chairman of Financial Services and reappointed this year. So it's an important committee. Ron Mariano, the Speaker of the House, was chairman of this committee for a long time. So it's an honor to hold that seat that Ron once sat in. So we oversee insurance matters and banking matters, as you know. This is the second year of a 2-year cycle. So Our sessions are 2 years. Bills are filed the previous year. We have hearings, and then we send the bills out in some form in the second year, which we're currently in. So you and I have had hearings on about 400 bills. Every bill gets a hearing. And so we've heard the bills, we've made our recommendations. We have 16 members on our committee, as you know, so Democrats, Republicans, senators and reps, state reps, the 16 members. I'm House Chairman of the committee. I have a Senate Chairman, Paul Feeney, who was just appointed to the committee, recently appointed. So we have a number of hearings throughout the year, which now concluded, and we've made recommendations as to what should happen to the bills. Our purview is insurance matters and banking matters. And we also have app-based technology matters in our committee because these companies that come in need certain insurances, so that those bills end up on our committee. Over the course of the past couple of years, our committee's been very important because when the pandemic hit, we didn't know how long it was going to last. A lot of people were in trouble, from business community to individuals. How are you going to pay your bills when a pandemic hits? So our committee jumped in, working with the Insurance Commissioner, the Banking Commissioner, to make sure that from a financial standpoint, the banks would go easy on people in regard to mortgages that people may owe, or personal loans and credit cards that they may owe. We asked them to forbear on those things. As soon as the pandemic hit, we asked the banks to work with people so they couldn't foreclose on homes or repossess cars. We asked them not to allow any negative credit reporting for people during this time. Student loan debt collection. Work with the banks to make sure that they would work with us to make sure that people were okay during this time. And to their credit, they did jump to action and help us with that. So that's part of what our committee does. We work with the banking community. We also work on insurance matters. We do a lot of healthcare type matters in our committee. One thing we did during the pandemic was through our committee the use of telemedicine. Telemedicine was always an important piece of being able to go to the doctor, not to go physically, but be able to go online, whether it be through your phone or computer, to have a doctor look at you. It's very important for anybody to be able to have that service, right? But especially for older people who can't get to the doctor, there are people in the state that don't live near doctors, but telemedicine was never really allowed. But during the pandemic, our committee worked feverishly to make sure that we could that use and that insurance companies would pay for it. So telemedicine was put through our committee, and I think it's here to stay long term. I think if the pandemic didn't happen, telemedicine, there'd always be some resistance to it. But I think because of the pandemic, telemedicine became more of an accepted part of how people see the doctor now. So that was done through our committee. We work on things like prescription drug costs and ability to get drugs, the ability for people to go get services and have insurance companies pay for it. So our committee is vital to making sure that we work on bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. We work on ways to have people to get the proper tests and have insurance covered. And then the increased use of telemedicine, which I didn't realize when we first started doing it, but psychiatric issues, especially now, whether it be adults or kids, the pandemic's been very difficult on people, especially the kids, as you may know, as you and I talk about. Kids have had a hard time during this, and to be able to access psychiatric care for kids through telemedicine without having to have the kid go to a doctor's office, they can get online and get the services they need, especially if they're having a very hard time or they're in a crisis situation where they can't get in the car, they can't go to the doctor's appointment. They can get telemedicine services for psychiatric reasons right away. So telemedicine is vital, and it's important that you, as you know, and you've been working on, we're going to make sure that telemedicine remains an option for people, and those are things that have come through our committee.
You and I hear a lot from our seniors, like you say, telemedicine is such an important advancement because, our seniors, they might not have transportation options, they might be homebound, and to be able to have this where they can communicate with their doctor, we see it, our seniors are living on a fixed income. To be able to offer that, to be able to kind of fight for prescription drug costs, it's a quality of life issue. They want to stay home, they want to stay independent, and this type of legislation has an impact on whether or not they can do that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, you and I always say, you and I are products of our community, right? I was born in Weymouth, you were born in Quincy. We know our neighborhoods, we know our citizens, we know our neighbors. And we're accessible. People know they can call us for help. And we hear loud and clear when they call us up looking for services like telemedicine or help, going through the hurdles of applying for unemployment, whatever it might be. they know that we're there for them. And I know that, through the last couple of years, it's been vitally important for people to be able to navigate these things and to make sure that you and I continue to advocate for expanded coverages to make sure that people are okay from a medical standpoint.
Yeah. Well, the legislation that you're debating has a direct impact on everyone. I know the committee has over, I think, 300 bills right now. Is there anything you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I just want to, we could talk for hours, right? But I know we're limited to a half hour. I'm happy to come back at any time, should I be invited. But I want to thank QATV for having this. I want to thank you for inviting me. It's the first time I've actually done this with you. So it's been an honor to work with you over the past 21 years or so. And a lot of our colleagues from this area, I'm lucky to have great partners in what I do. And I look forward to our continued work, having you as vice chairman of the committee. It's a great committee, and I'm glad you're on it with me. I'm glad Speaker Mariano appoints you to be the vice chair. And to the people of Quincy, thank you for listening to me today, and thanks for having me as your guest.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being on the show. I'd encourage some of the viewers, if you have any questions related to some of the issues that we talked about, to contact our office. We can be reached at 617-722-2220. We also hold office hours if you'd like to discuss some of these issues in person or remotely. We can arrange that. And I want to thank QATV for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you.